In this podcast, we speak again to former British Superbike champion John Reynolds. This time round, John tells us about his role as test and development rider for Suzuki, and more specifically, his work on getting the GSX-R 1000 Superbike finalised and ready for production. As he tells us, it's an important job requiring plenty of hard work and plenty of fast riding. But it sometimes involves telling the Suzuki engineers that the job's not finished and they need to do more. Let's listen to him telling us about that and a whole lot more. So, John, we've got the pleasure of talking to you again. It's a few months on from the original time. Lockdown restrictions have been eased a bit. Have you been able to sort of get out and about and live a more normal life?
Yeah, sort of, Chris. I mean, it's been a tricky one, hasn't it, really? As regards work, there's not really been that much kicking off at all. Racing, there's been no racing at all. Lucky enough now, it's just starting to get back going again. But no, it's been a weird old time for the last 6 months, really. I think we can all agree on that one.
Yeah, definitely. Did you go to Donington for the first round then, John?
No, I didn't. I was watching it on television.
Do you ever say, I could have beaten them, I could have won that?
No, never. What I do say is I couldn't do that again. I really do. I mean, when you see them sat on the line and you think, I know exactly what they're going through. No, I don't envy them one bit.
Yeah. Did you used to get very nervous, John?
Yeah, very nervous, yeah. I mean, on the verge of really being sick. You know, it was that bad. I didn't really want to eat on a Sunday, especially on a Sunday. Get up in the morning, you'd have to force some breakfast down and then force something to eat during the racing. But I used to live on a liquid diet mainly on the Sunday.
Okay, let's move things forward and take you back in time. We're going to talk this morning about your test and development role as a test rider for Suzuki, and specifically your involvement with the GSX-R 1000 models. Just tell me a bit about that role, John. What does it involve?
It involves working with the Japanese, with the people that design and build the bike, and really pushing the bike to its limits on the road and on the track. Really, it's as simple as that. Just putting the bike through its paces, basically.
And at what point do you get involved, or did you get involved with that 2017 model?
And we went out over to Japan to test the bike the first time, and the idea was to go and sign it off and get it into production. But we came to the conclusion actually the bike wasn't ready. You know, my brief was that it needed to be the fastest bike around the track, basically, and we came away. Or at that test, realised it actually wasn't. So really, it was back to the drawing boards.
So, which track was it? The Suzuki's test track? Is it Ryuo?
Yes,
or?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Yes, yeah. It's a great test track actually.
And why is that, John? Is it because it's got great variety in terms of corners?
Exactly that. Yeah, you've got flat out top gear corners, second gear corners, a long straight which is probably a mile and a half long. So you can get the bike maxed out in top gear for a long period of time. It's over a crest of a hill as well, so stability comes into it. No, it's got everything, as you can well imagine.
Now, if they were saying that the model wasn't fast enough compared to the opposition, I presume that they had examples of, the R1, the ZX-10 and the Blade there for comparison. And do you get to ride those as well, John?
Yes, we do, yeah. Yeah.
Right, so you're making a very specific judgment. I'm quite impressed with that. And it strikes me as though you probably reached that conclusion within about 3 to 5 laps. Was that true?
No, not really. No, it's it's a day's work. I mean, we get out and we ride the old Suzuki, in other words, the pre-model to that. And then we ride the new one, and then we'll ride all the competitors' bikes. So that will take a day. There's 3 test riders within the team, plus the Japanese rider as well, so that'll be 4. And then we start the serious stuff. So it's basically you ride the bike and get your first opinion of how it all feels. And then it gets down to the serious part of it, as you actually start then pushing the bikes, and then we start comparing the bikes.
I mean, it strikes me as though, being the competitive chap that you are, you were probably trying as hard to set the fastest lap you could possible as you would do in a BSB round.
Yeah, you're pushing hard. Yeah, you really are. I mean, you've got to, if you're going to test the bike to the limits, you've got to be pushing hard. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm as quick now as I was when I was at my peak, but I can still drag a bike around the track reasonably quick, and I've got good feedback of what the bike's doing, and if it's not doing anything right, then we talk about it. But it's a fascinating job. It really is. And working with incredibly clever people. But I've been gifted with that most of my racing career anyway. So, I mean, one of the questions a lot of people ask is, how on earth do you complain about a bike to the Japanese who've just built it? But my job at the end of the day is not as a yes man to say, "Oh, what a fantastic job this is." If there is something wrong, I'm paid to say, "I think this is a weak part of where we're at. Can we make it better?" So.
And what sort of reaction do you get from the Japanese if you are pretty critical about a specific item?
Yeah, I mean, they do take it personally if you do criticise, but if it's done in a way where they can see you're not being funny about it, you actually honestly mean what you're saying, then you ride with it, really. But yeah, they don't take it that well, to be fair. When they spent probably 2 years developing a motorcycle, and then somebody from England comes over and criticises, it's not going to go down too well, is it? Obviously. I think when they're talking Japanese and obviously I can't understand, it's probably beneficial for them, maybe.
Might be beneficial for you, in fact, depending on what they say, yeah. John, give me some examples of issues that, would there be a suspension issue that you weren't happy with, or a power delivery, a steering issue? What sort of things lead to debate?
When we got there to start with, it didn't have a quick shifter on it.
How did that get resolved?
We kept mentioning this quick shifter. Every time we went out on the bike, came back, said, "Great, quick shifter. We need a quick shifter," all the time. And if you could imagine the circuit where we were at in Rio, we're in the park in the garage here. The straight goes across there all the way around the back, and then the straight comes back down again about 250 yards away. But in the middle is a little access road, and we were just sat there having a cup of tea, and we heard this GSX-R come up this little service road, had a massive box on the back of it, and it sounded like it got a quick shifter on it. And I said to Jürgen, my friend, German friend, I said, that's a quick shifter they've got on that bike. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're testing a quick shifter. So we knew then we were going to have something to work with later on. As regards handling, there was a bit of an issue with the bike in stability when we first started riding the bike. So the wheelbase was lengthened slightly, and then it came back to a beautiful, sweet machine again, which we were looking for.
John, the electronics are part and parcel of modern superbikes, traction, cornering, ABS, power modes, etc. How much involvement do you have in refining those?
Well, I'd never had traction control in my racing career, so it was all new to me. I was learning about it, so it was all really quite interesting. But what I didn't want was the bike with the traction to be coming in when you didn't really need it. I just wanted it there to save you. Well, on the GSX-R, there's 10 modes of traction control, 10 variants, if you like. One being very, very little at all, very intrusive, or little intrusive, or number 10, where it would actually drag you out of a muddy field if you really wanted it to. That's how good and variant it is. So, yeah, I mean, what I didn't want was the bike on, say, traction control 1, which is the least intrusive, to be coming in as you're accelerating hard out of corners. I wanted the bike to be able to slide and give the rider feeling, if you like, but then save the slide from being a high side. And, it was interesting, and we sort of got there in the end.
When you went back to test the modified, greater power, faster bike, were you instantly sort of impressed that they'd done the job as well as they needed to?
Yeah, pretty much so. Yeah, we got back and we realised that there was the quick shifter was on and that worked beautifully. Blipper system as well, and the horsepower figures were good, and we were competitive. And yes, we were over the moon with it.
How much do you think your sort of analytical mind and your racing background help you with the role and identifying what needs to be improved?
Well, I suppose it helps if you've won a couple of British Championships and you've been successful or semi-successful in World Superbike and stuff. And so yeah, I mean, I've got a bit of credibility, and I can. The deal is, well, the Japanese riders are there, and I'm going around with some of the top test riders, and they would come back and say either this bloke hasn't got a clue what he's doing, he's slow, or he ain't that bad, and I'd like to think it's he ain't that bad is what they come up with. But
what about the analytical side, though? I mean, when you practice and qualify and race, you're constantly thinking about the behaviour of the bike, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to interpret those feelings to an engineer, that must still hold true, does it, when you're testing and developing the GSX-Rs?
Absolutely. I mean, every time you're on the bike, you're thinking of what it's doing, what it's not doing. And I mean, 20 years of racing motorbikes, that's all you do in testing and qualifying, is trying to make the bike work better for you and work out if it's not going to work for you that weekend, how you're going to work around it to make it work, if you like. Just make the best out of it. So
it strikes me as though it's quite a sort of a job requiring many of the qualities that racing does, sort of dedication, analysis, as I've mentioned. And is it quite rewarding, or just as rewarding as racing at times, John, this test and development role?
You know what it is? When you've actually hit on something and you've been complaining about something for a bit, and then you actually get it right, it's just such a satisfying feeling. It's not like being in a race scenario, because you're working with a team, and the team are all there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to make that bike the best it can possibly be. And when you hit on something and you think, wow, it gives you a great feeling. Yeah, it really does. Yeah, and I do enjoy that part.
How fast are the Japanese test riders, John? Are they a bit handy?
Yeah, they are. They're good. Yeah, they're ex-racers, and they are very quick. And of course, they know the circuit as well, and they know how to get the best out of it. So, I mean, they wouldn't be employed if they weren't quick, because what's the point in testing a bike if you can't push it to the limits? No, they're a good bunch. They really are.
Do you ever get asked your opinion on some of the things that aren't so performance related, like the general comfort and rideability of the bike?
Absolutely, yeah, everything. Yeah, there's a big list what we have to go through. Maneuverability, comforts, visibility on how things are, the mirrors, the lights. The whole package is tested. And I say the lights. We even do a night test where we have to go out at night and compare the bikes with visibility on the road with the lighting and stuff. So everything is tested. Yes, even the looks of the bike. You ask our opinion on.
How much road riding do you do, John?
We do a lot. The first test we did, we went out to Japan, and then we went out to Japan again to test, and then we thought, yeah, that's brilliant. And then they came back to Europe, and we had a month, but riding pretty well every day. It's a big deal.
It would appear so. John, did you end up going to the press launch then of the final production version?
Yes, the world launch over in Australia, Phillip Island. Yes, I was there. I did all the rider briefings before they went out during the day, and it was a great week we had out there.
And were you happy with that final bike that you knew was going to go to the shops?
I was very happy. Yeah, I mean, I was proud to be part of it. I think most of the press enjoyed the bike, and they still do, to be fair. I mean,
well, shall I tell you a story? I'm a bit sort of worried about the performance of superbikes these days, and I love them. And they are fantastic things to ride, but I do worry about the license being retained. And I needed a bike to get from Milton Keynes home, that's all. It was after I dropped a test bike off. And James offered me a GSX-R 1000R. And I said, mate, I don't need to get home in seconds. I just need to get home eventually, you know. Anyway, I ended up going to Wales on it for some business I had in a couple of days after. And it was really quite usable, comfortable. It was a bloody good road bike. And, of course, it was very, very stimulating whenever you got on the throttle. And then I ended up going to Scotland on it for about, I think, 3 days or so. And I came back with a completely revised opinion of that bike. It is much more versatile and real world than you might think, isn't it?
It is, honestly, and I totally agree with you with that. It's a sports bike that you can actually tour on. And I've said that, you know, I've done that before. I've been over up to Scotland on the bike and spent many an hour on the bike. And, you know, as sports bikes go, it's probably one of the most comfy bikes out there, if not the most comfy bike. And it's got everything you need. You know, you've got comfort, you've got speed. And again, the throttle works both ways. Just because it will do the best part of 200 mile an hour doesn't mean you have to do it on the road anyway. So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's still one of the best bikes out there, if not the best bike.
John, the bike was good enough to do well in racing, wasn't it? In super stock, in road racing, particularly with Michael Dunlop on it. Were you pleased to see that? And was it obvious when you were testing it that it would be good for that role?
I did. I knew that for a fact, yeah. I mean, as I said earlier, my brief was to make sure that bike is as quick or quicker than anything on a track. And I came away thinking, you know what, we've got one of the best bike out there now. So I was convinced we were going to win championships with it, and we have done with the super stock, you know, which is a great. If you can win championships on a stock bike, then that's great.
I mean, do you think the GSX-R has still got it? Has it still got potential to do well in British superbike racing?
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's going to win races. It will do. Yeah, sure. As I say, I think Kyle Ride is going to be a good lad to have on the bike, and you know, he's first time out on a superbike, and he led a race. You can't knock that. He'll come strong, and I think he's worth keeping hold of if they can. You know, there's not a bad bike out there, but you've got to have the package. You've got to have the team, which Suzuki have got. I'm convinced they've got the bike, and I'm convinced they've got the rider now again. So I think we'll see them winning races, and there's no two ways about it. There's nothing wrong with that bike at all.
So, John, just away from the racing and the GSX-R now in particular, what sort of other Suzukis have you helped play a role in testing and developing?
Well, the first test I ever did was with the SB650, and that was, I think, really for me to see what testing was like. This was over in Germany, and to see if I enjoyed it, and to see whether the Japanese would work with me. And it worked out. I enjoyed it, and they could work with me, so which was good. And you know what? That SB650, when I thought we were going to have a week testing that, I thought it was going to be quite tame. You know what? I fell in love with that bike. Incredible. The part of the circuit we do the windy road, we do back lane stuff, we do fast roads, and then we do an autobahn section, which is about 16 kilometres long. Well, it is 16 kilometres. And that bike, to get onto the autobahn, was pinned 16 kilometres day in, day out. And it just goes to show the bike is just bulletproof. Proper thing it was. And I was invested. I've been in with all the GSX-Rs, the 750s, the 600s, also the 1000s, and also the B-King. That was fun.
Now, final question. Are you any good at either of these two things, drinking sake and karaoke?
One of them. Sake.
Which one?
I'm not no good at karaoke. That is for sure. Yeah.
How do you know that you're no good at karaoke?
People tell me. But honestly, if you do get the chance to go to Japan, go, because it's one of the best places in the world. I love it.
Sounds like he's still enjoying the biking life, doesn't it? Mind you, it's obvious from what John says, there's a hell of a lot more to the test and development role than you might think. I wouldn't mind having a go at it, but I'm not sure if I'd be brave enough to tell anyone their baby wasn't quite good enough yet. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss the next Inside Line podcast. See you then.